All right, everybody. Welcome to another AMA. While Mitch goes and grabs his headphones, I will give you the Leo weekly recap. So if you missed the past 2 weeks, we started doing these weekly recaps on X. So if you're missing them, make sure you go to X on the main LeoDex account and you can find the recaps that we're doing. And then obviously for the AMA, I'm just kind of verbally going through them. We've been working on quite a lot of things. In the recap, though, this is kind of a staking rewards live stream launch party because the SLEO staking rewards are officially live. So for the past 90 days, if you missed it, for the past 90 days, the USDC rewards from LeoDex have been accruing in the POL Vault address. And those have been buying Leo and permanently staking it in that Vault address. It hasn't fully staked all the Leo that it's bought yet, but I think it will have bought close to 700,000 Leo. The rough figure I saw last, roughly 700,000 Leo was bought over the past 90 days by the POL address. Any remaining Leo from the airdrop, there was a three-phase airdrop for LeoDex to essentially grow the initial user base and get people excited outside of our own ecosystem. We've only done 2 phases of that 3-phase airdrop. Because of the claim module issues, I and the team have been kind of talking about not doing the phase 3 part. So we haven't fully decided on that yet, but I'd say 90% sure there's not going to be a phase 3. So we've already had phase 1 and the phase 1 claims are almost done. Now we're on phase 2 claim. And once we're done with phase 2 claims, we'll kind of officially decide what we're doing if we're going to have a phase 3, but I think most likely we're not going to have a phase. So essentially what we're going to do then is any remaining Leo from the airdrop will just get deposited to the POL vault and permanently locked in there. So that's probably most likely what's going to happen. But phase 1 and phase 2 are already done. So now we're just on to completing the phase 1 claims, then completing the phase 2 claims, and then we'll probably be done with airdrops and whatnot, just because they cause a lot of headaches for the team. So the SLEO rewards, that's for the past 90 days. Both the airdrop was going and then also the buybacks of Leo by the POL was going. And now, as of today, 100% of the USDC that comes in from LeoDex affiliate fees is now paid directly to the SLEO contract. So what that means is if you are staking Leo on leodex.io/Leo, if you're an active staker, you can now claim USDC every day. If you go to the page, you'll see how much USDC is accruing, and then you can harvest using that page. There's also some other analytics and metrics on that page that you can track. For example, right now you can see the TVL, which is the total amount. It's about 1.8 million Leo. So that has grown about 16% today. I expect that with USDC rewards starting today, you're going to see that grow significantly. Where I've kind of estimated that will land is somewhere between 15 and 20 million Leo. We'll probably end up in the long run. And then the other Leo that's out there, because obviously there's only 30 million total Leo that exist, will most likely be staked on Leo or just kind of floating around on various chains. Obviously, Leo is on multiple blockchains. So that is the the SLEO contract. There's no unstaking time, there's no fees of any kind for staking Leo. I've seen a lot of people ask what SLEO is, like thinking it's a new form of Leo wrapped on another chain. It is not. SLEO is simply staked Leo. So when you stake Leo in the Arbitrage contract, you receive SLEO. And SLEO is basically just a claim to then withdraw your Leo later. So one SLEO always equals one Leo. There's no unstake time or anything like that. You can seamlessly move between Leo and SLEO. And SLEO is not a different token. I guess technically it is a different token, but it's just a claim on your stake. So literally it just represents, if you're a long time, Leo and in Leo user, then you understand that SLEO is essentially the equivalent of Leo power for Leo. So you know that Leo power is not a different token. It's just what represents the staked Leo on Leo. So that is the equivalent is SLEO. So hopefully that all makes sense. I talked a little bit about protocol already, but that has been snowballing, and growing. And like I said, between the buybacks that haven't been staked yet, and then the remainder from the airdrop that's going to be staked as well, since we're not going to have phase 3. I would expect the POL to have somewhere in the realm of 2 to 3 million Leo once all that gets deposited in there. So you'll be able to track POL. You already do it in real time at the bottom of the leodex.io/Leo page. If you go to that page, scroll to the bottom, you'll see protocol owned Leo. There's a whole section there. It shows the real-time holdings of that vault address. And there's some cool metrics there also. By the way, I'm reading from the X thread. So you'll find the X thread I posted from the LeoDex account. You share and comment and whatnot, spread the word about all the Leo updates. But on this screenshot that's in there, you can see the amount of SLEO held by the POL. You can see the daily yield. So right now, this obviously all shows zero because the rewards, haven't been paid out yet. But once the rewards start paying, you'll start to see these metrics fill out. But the daily yield is the amount of USDC that the POL gets from the total SLEO stake. So, for example, if the POL has 10% of all SLEO, right now it has a little bit more than 10%. And then let's say that the daily yield into the SLEO contract is 1,000 USDC a day. The POL would get 100 of that, and then it would use that 100 USDC to buy Leo market, through the Maya protocol swap. And then it would stake the 100 USDC worth of Leo that it bought, so it adds it to its current Leo stake. So that means that it's essentially just auto-compounding, and then it does it the next day. So then every single day, the POL is earning some percentage of the USDC earned by Leo, and then buying more Leo, staking that Leo, and then earning more USDC the next day. So you can assume that over a long period of time, the percentage that the protocol owned Leo represents of all Leo is just going to grow up and to the right because it is a permanent auto compounder, right? So like as USDC flows into LeoDex, it's just constantly compounding its percentage of that USDC into Leo. So it creates a permanent buyer that continuously accumulates. So it's going to be fun, I think, to watch the POL grow. I think it should own 10% of the Leo. Right now, it's more than 10%, but I think a lot of Leo still has to be moved over in stake. So, I think in the long run, it will always have more than 10% of all Leo that's out there. And then it's just going to keep growing from there. So it'll be 10% this year, maybe 11% next year, and it'll just kind of keep growing. The rate at which it grows is actually completely dependent on how much USDC is earned by LeoDex. If the USDC continues to grow in terms of earnings, then the POL's earnings grow, which means it's buying and staking more Leo every day. So again, this is a really fun metric to track. We tried to make the dashboard for this really fun as well because I think it's just going to be kind of cool to share and track every single day and kind of try to project. And by the way, the dashboard also creates its own calculation and tries to project how much the Leo will compound in the POL. So all that stuff will be fun to track after today where the USDC starts flowing in. So what's next for LeoDex in terms of development features? Perps. So we've been working on Perpetual Futures.
Hey, yeah. Cal. Well, one, can you hear me?
Try again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you on Spaces, but try again.
Testing. Spaces, sound.
Yeah, I think I can hear you.
Well, everyone's saying that you aren't clear on the YouTube, so
that's not good. Let's see here. I'm gonna have to hear it myself.
Seems like YouTube and Spaces are not friends.
No, they do not like each other.
I hear you. I mean, I've heard you fine the whole time. Well, they can hear me on Spaces, so that's good.
I hear it fine.
Khan said it's better now.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Hear you on YouTube. All right. Well, you guys just comment in the threadcast if you can't hear anything.
Much better voice now.
It's fine.
You're boxy today.
Well,
good enough.
I'll take it. What's next for LeoDex is Perpetual Futures. So we've been working for a few weeks on adding Perpetual Futures. It's been a hell of a ride to build this out. It's really a kind of a moment where you're essentially like building from the ground up in terms of like a completely new way to trade, a completely new way to swap, a completely new interface, a completely new bank. So if you don't know, we're building Perps exclusively using Ruggiero network, which is basically a second layer on Thorchain. So Ruggiero is built on Thorchain, and they have a bunch of financial tools and features that they've been building out. The first thing we added was actually some of the index products through the NAMI team, which is a team on Ruggiero. We already added those on the TCY page of LeoDex. With Perps, it was like building literally a whole new interface and backend. So we had to build our own backend, and then we also built the front end from scratch. If you go to the X thread on the LeoDex account, you can see a screenshot on the fourth thread showing the UI that we built. What I think is going to be really fascinating is we're the first interface to have Perps for Ruggiero outside of the official Ruggiero interface. We're first to market in terms of that. And then what's going to be exciting to see is as Ruggiero Perps grow, LeoDex Perps will obviously grow as well, and we'll continue to release new features that make it even better. Perps open up a whole new market. So, right now, all you can do on LeoDex is really swap. You can obviously swap and send. But on, with Perps, you open up a whole market of actual trading. So people trade Perps much more frequently than they swap assets. And one of the ways I like to think about this is when you think about swapping, what you're doing is you're trading from your portfolio, you're making changes to your portfolio, which is a much less frequent activity than actual trading, which is done, via something like Perps, where Mitch may look at the Bitcoin market today and say, hey, I think Bitcoin's going to rise, in the next week. He's much more likely to make a trade on Perps, for a leveraged Bitcoin, short-term trade than he is to like swap his spot USDT for BTC, right? And by the way, once you swap BTC to USDT, is he then swap back USDT to BTC next week? Maybe, and there's plenty of people who do that. But there's far more people who will do a short-term trade through something like Perps with leverage than exactly. Then we'll do spot swaps. So I think we're opening up to a much larger market, and if you look at the broader crypto space, Perps already.
Well, I mean, it's also a market that is looking for access. So folks in the U.S. that want to do perp trading have very limited access to that. So just having an easy outlet on something that you already use just is an additional perk, so to speak.
Yeah, perps are going to open up a whole new trading venue and user base. It's going to be incredible. So I'm very excited. We've been working stupidly hard on the interface for it. So it's going to be awesome to roll it out. We're aiming to have it live by tomorrow. We're literally just doing a lot of refining touches right now to make the user experience as good as possible. So we want to have a really smooth launch. So that should be live. If not by tomorrow, then by the end of the week for sure. And I think it should grow the volumes on LeoDex significantly, which obviously now goes straight into contract. The fifth thing here is that LeoDex achieved the highest swaps per user. So if you go to Xscanner and track for all the interfaces, Dex is now number one in terms of swaps per unique user. What that means is when people use LeoDex, they tend to come back. That's essentially, it's kind of like a stickiness metric. So that's been fun to watch and see. We've always kind of, I would say, since LeoDex started to gain some traction a few months ago, we were kind of in the top 5 at all times. Really, grew from top 5, and now we're top 1. So that's awesome to see, and now we're scale the volume. Sixth thing here is the $10 billion market cap vision for the Leo token. So I talked about this last week too, and then blog post about it. But here we kind of, read the $10 billion vision and how it all hinges on net economic inflows, or NEI. So really just growing Leo AI, LeoDex, now with Perps coming. So many different things that are happening in the economy that are all driven to, essentially find streams of economic inflows and put them into the Leo token. So fold them into the Leo token and just kind of continue to scale financially from there. Leo Strategy is working on SLEO lending. So they've been releasing some teasers, and I talked to them. They're going to, at some point in the Threadcast, maybe now that I've mentioned it, they're going to drop a teaser of the dashboard for SLEO lending, which will kind of give us a lens into what they're building in terms of that. The TLDR is that the lending contract allows you to take collateralized loans into SLEO. So you can obviously stake your Leo to SLEO on leodex.io/Leo. And then Leo Strategy is building basically their own contract that will let you take your SLEO, deposit it to the contract, the lending contract, and then you get USD back. So you'll get some form of stable coin out of the loan. So and I think, and I've obviously already seen the teaser screenshot, but there's going to be a 50% LTV to start. So essentially, if you have $10,000 worth of SLEO, for example, you can deposit $10,000 worth of SLEO, take out a $5,000 loan against the SLEO. Leo Strategy charges a 1% origination fee, so it's 1% when you deposit. Then they charge a 5% APR for the length of the loan, and that's kind of calculated every single day. So every day, basically 5% annualized by 365 is the amount of interest that will accrue. And when you're done with the loan, you simply pay back the USD and then you get your SLEO back. So this is going to open up a whole new, really, utility for holding Leo. So I think many of us hold a lot of Leo, and we don't want to sell the Leo, but you may need liquidity. So I know Closers is a good example. He's talked about one reason he would use an SLEO loan would be to like buy a car. He would put his SLEO in the contract. He would take out a loan, go buy the car, and one day he would pay back that loan, or maybe over time kind of slowly pay it back, or also wait for Leo to rise in price and then let the loan pay itself back. So there's a lot of really interesting financial utilities and plans. There's something like lending. I posted the thread because I found it very interesting. But Aave's made in the 3 quarters of this year so far, Aave and Aave is the biggest lending protocol in DeFi, if you don't know. They've made $500 million in fees just this year so far. And the year's not over. They'll probably hit 750 plus billion, I would say, by the end of this year. Over $500 million in fees were generated from collateralized lending on things like Bitcoin and Ethereum through just one protocol. So obviously, Leo loans are not going to compete with Ethereum loans in terms of scale. But if you assume any level of scale for SLEO lending, and obviously there's only going to be one method to do it, which is through Leo strategy, through any amount of scale, and you could foresee, Leo strategy making, $10,000 or $100,000 or maybe even $1 million in fees every single month from something like SLEO over the next 10 years as something like that scales. And obviously, as the Leo price grows, the USD amount of earn will only increase because obviously, the scale of it itself is what gives you the scale, right? So if Leo's 10 cents and you put 100,000 Leo in a contract, that's only $10,000. If Leo is $100, you put 1,000 Leo in a contract, $100,000. The scale of Leo's price will continue to feed more inflows into Leo strategy, which then uses 100% of the income from the origination fee and the APR to buy more Leo and add it to their balance sheet, which obviously then increases the Leo price for long periods of time. So really over long periods of time, all these economic inflows are designed to make Leo perform well in long time frames. And the performance of it itself leads to more performance. So flywheels are pretty fun to imagine. They're all contingent on net economic inflows. So really, you just need to get more and more inflows in the system, and that gives torque to everything. And then you use that torque to spin the flywheels. Dex is like the river that flows in and turns the hydropowered generator of the Leo economy. So get more LeoDex volume and then turn the whole economy, allow the economy's gears to turn and generate even more flow.
Lord Shaw asked, how would the exchange realize perps like from the pair of the tokens? Like for instance, like when you do, like when I trade perps now, I know basically I'm essentially using USDT as my collateral, so to speak. Would it be pair based or would it be like Leo based, or so like, if I get into like whatever the perp trade is, it's like I can do, let's say like his example, like Leo BTC, and I get liquidated, like what's getting liquidated? Is it going to be like some of the other perp things where it's USDT perps trading and then you're essentially doing whatever against USDT, or is it going to be any coin versus any coin and then you're putting up, I guess one of those coins is collateral?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like I said, for X Perps, the exclusive launch of it is through Ruggiero Network, which is built on Thorchain. So basically, each Perps market is going to be a little bit different. But with the Ruggiero Perps, USDC is used as the collateral. So you actually deposit USDC, which Ruggiero is fully decentralized, by the way. So when you say the word deposit, you're not depositing it to a centralized exchange, for example. You're actually securing it, but we're just using the word deposit because it's more understandable in the broader Perps market. So you actually secure the USDC, which is what Ruggiero calls it, which is effectively the same as depositing. And what that does is it actually converts your USDC, for example, into secured USDC. And that secured USDC actually lives on the Thorchain network. And then your ETH.USDC is locked in a Thorchain vault. When you go to withdraw, you basically unsecure your USDC, which means you withdraw it out of the Thorchain vault and back into your wallet. as ETH.USDC. Think of it this way. If you have 1,000 USDC on Ethereum, you can deposit it into Ruggiero network so that you can then trade perps with it on LeoDex. Depositing it means that you take the USDC, you deposit it to a Thorchain decentralized vault, and then in exchange, you receive secured USDC on Ruggiero network, which you can then use as collateral to trade. And then when you're done and you want to withdraw it, you send back the secured USDC, and then you receive your ETH.USDC back in your wallet. So that's basically how that works. So when you open a perps trade, you're using USDC collateral, and then you can, on the current state of Ruggiero network, the max leverage you can use is 4x. So for example, if you deposit 1,000 USDC and you open a Bitcoin long position, you can open up to $4,000 worth of Bitcoin as a long position with 1,000 USDC in collateral. So that's how that works. The goal of Ruggiero over time is to raise the amount of leverage that you can use as the network scales. So far, it's done about 13 or 14 million in trading volume on perps.
Kind of follow-up questions I'm seeing from people that sort of stay in the same realm. So obviously you talked about SLEO and staking and whatnot. I see. So what Ben Haas is asking is actually, your question is kind of not an issue. The price of Leo has nothing to do with the staking rewards, because the staking rewards for SLEO are paid out in USDC, and that's based on volume on LeoDex. So the price of Leo doesn't have any impact, so to speak. Is there an auto staking feature available for rewards earned, or do I have to convert my USDC to Leo and stake again?
There's no auto stake.
I don't know what happened to your sound, but you literally sound like you like jumped in a fish tank.
Hopefully this is better. There's no auto stake as of right now, but we will add it. We will most likely add it, or for example, LeoStrategy could build it. So we'll kind of see. I think a cool future is that LeoStrategy has a lot of financial tools, services, and products in mind. So obviously, like lending, for example, the Leo team doesn't have to build a lot of this stuff because LeoStrategy can go out there as a separate team and build it. So I think that that's a really cool future for our ecosystem, is that you now have two teams that are building stuff for the community and the ecosystem, and you don't need to just rely on one or the other. In the long run, I could see a lot of things like auto-compounding and other financial things just being built by LeoStrategy. They're already building out a lot of things. They've got LSTR voter, they've got collateralized lending on the way, and a bunch of other stuff.
That's funny. Your sound on YouTube apparently is terrible now. But anyway, Charles like asking all the questions I want to ask. Leverage on the perps, 4x leverage. Like, what times leverage is there going to be? Like, can I go 10x if I want to?
Which does 4x. 4x leverage right now is the max.
I don't even know that I hear you anymore.
The audio sounds great to me on YouTube. I've checked it like 3 times.
But you're back.
No, I
lost you for like 15 seconds.
I was just checking the YouTube audio, which sounds perfectly fine to me. So
that's funny.
So the leverage is all determined by Ruggiero. Like I said, they've been slowly scaling up. So as it continues to scale up, they'll continue to increase the potential leverage you can use. So right now it's 4x. X, again, just to reiterate, is simply an interface. We just tap into different protocols, and that's completely determined by what those protocols do. But LeoDex is really just giving you a UI to access all the different protocols.
Edwin asked, will the platform, the LeoStrategy's lending platform will be, I'm assuming the UI will be on LeoDex.
Well, they've actually, so I just saw a screenshot they posted in the Threadcast. They posted a SLEO lending teaser. So this,
there you go,
their own UI, and this is added to their dashboard. So I don't know if you've seen, but they've been posting screenshots of their own analytics dashboard app, which shows the fund size, the Leo yield that they generate, and LSTR surge charts, data on their purchases, etc. So it looks like there's going to be a new lending tab on that dashboard, and you'll actually be able to do everything through that dashboard. I also think it's possible we'll add it to LeoDex in the long run. So we'll just kind of see how they progress with things, But obviously, nothing wrong with them just having their own UI for it as well. But yeah, we could always just tap into the contract for SLEO lending and put it on LeoDex.
Pretty. So This has become the when question. It's been a long time since we've had consistent whens and soons.
Because there's been so many nows.
But I know that Leo Strategy is working on an Arbot that may or may not help the bridge fees. So update on that, because every week I see people in the Threadcast asking about what's up with the fees, or I can't afford to pay that much fee. So what's the latest on their ARB?
Yeah, the update I got today is that it's all in testing. It could be live as soon as today. I kept kind of pinging them and saying, hey, it would be nice to get it by September 23rd. Obviously, I don't have any control over how fast that happens. I do know that it's in testing, and I have seen the tests. So I know that it's actively being built. And then also the other effect is, how soon does it go live? And then also, how soon does it lower the fees for the bridges? So depending on how effective the arbitrage bot is, it may take a while or it may be really fast. It's just hard to tell right now in terms of getting the fees down for bridging. I've talked about why this is, and I know this is a huge question that people ask. Well, first of all, the bridging fees are burned. So 100% of all Leo bridging fees get burned. So, if the average fee is about 10%, which is what it is right now, and 1 million Leo gets bridged, that's 100,000 Leo that gets burned. And the total supply of Leo is 30 million tokens. So 100,000 Leo is quite a lot in terms of the total supply. It's very significant. The fact that they get burned should hopefully give people a little bit of solace. The reason why the bridging fees are so high is because of volatility on Leo and arbitrage bots harvesting that volatility and really sucking life out of the Leo economy. So what is important to see, in my opinion, is Leo Strategy's arbitrage bots do the opposite. So they actually harvest volatility, and then they take the income from market making and they use it to buy more Leo, which keeps the profits inside the Leo economy. So right now, the way I look at it is arbitrage bots bleed out an economy. And the way they do that is they take a small percentage on top of every single trade, and then they take that profit and they withdraw it out of the Leo economy. So I obviously have grown a distaste towards arbitrage bots ever since the old bridging days. And now with Leo bridges, we really built a system where the more that arbitrage bots arbitrage, the higher the fee gets. Because we look at it this way: if you're going to make 12% on an arb trade, then the Leo economy should make 10% of your 12%, and then you can take 2%. And that's, arbitraging is really a PvP game. So we win the PvP game in terms of the Leo economy by being the house. The house always wins. If the Leo economy is to provide arbitrage bots this opportunity to make a ton of money, then the Leo economy should be the biggest beneficiary of that profit. And it does so by burning the bridging fees. The long story short is, with Leo Strategy's arbitrage bot, now when any arbitrage happens, Leo Strategy will be the first and only really arbitrage bot, since they have a whitelisted lower fee than other arbitrage bots. Any profits that are made by Leo Strategy obviously buy Leo and add it to their balance sheet. So that keeps the economic inflows inside the Leo economy. It will actually supercharge the Leo token price. If you think about the long-term impact of it, imagine that, for example, $10,000 a day is generated from arbitrage profits on Leo Strategy's market maker. Then that's $10,000 a day that then goes and buys Leo and permanently stakes it, removing it from the market, can never be sold again. And that over time is going to have a very positive impact on Leo on its own. Then add in the layers of Leo Strategy, which is it's taking all the Leo on its balance sheet, and then it's using that Leo to generate more products and services like Leo lending, for example, which then generate more income. And then all that income is used to buy Leo and stake it permanently. So Leo Strategy, I keep talking about it in a certain way, where the way I see it is LeoDex is like the river that flows initial economic activity into the Leo economy. And Leo Strategy adds multiple gears to receive those flows and then turn them into more economic activity. And the way it does that is by taking the inflows, buying more Leo, using its expanding balance sheet to create more products and services, which generate more fees, which then buy more Leo and spin the whole flywheel. I really see it as, if you want to put numbers on it, $1 of economic inflows from LeoDex, for example, can be turned into $10 of economic accretion from Leo Strategy. We're slowly starting to see this take place through Leo Strategy, and all you need to do to see it is to track their buys. So they've been buying north of 40,000 Leo every single day, and that is accelerating. I expect it to continue to accelerate. as they simply just continue to acquire more and more Leo, stake it all as S-Leo, and then auto compound for more S-Leo while building out products and services that generate income and do the same. So very interesting to kind of model out this scenario. If Leo strategy reaches 10 million Leo by the end of this year, which is their goal, they're at about 2.8 million now. If they reach 10 million by the end of this year, that's a third of the Leo supply that can literally never get sold. It gets permanently staked on LeoDex, and then they use that stake to create more products and services, generate more revenue, and buy even more Leo. Do they end up with 10 million Leo by the end of the year? I think most likely yes. And from there, they can simply roll out more products and generate more revenue. So it's going to be interesting to see.
It's all good. Information is information. I mean, there's more questions. I feel like a lot of them are like kind of detail level stuff. So all that'll kind of be revealed when things launch in terms of functionality.
Lord Shah said, will there be any overnight fee for holding a perps position for longer periods, like a day or two? So perps on Ruggira work very similarly to perps on really any platform. Every 8 hours, there is a funding settlement. So I'll actually share a screenshot from the dashboard on LeoDex. But you can see there's a funding rate. I'm dropping it in the screenshot now. So here in this screenshot I just shared, I circled funding rate. So the funding rate right now for Bitcoin is 16% from the longs and negative 19% from the shorts. That's annualized. You pay if you're long Bitcoin. And if you're short, you get paid 19% from the funding rate on the other side of the trade. So funding rates, basically you can take this APR and then you divide it by, there's every 8 hours. So 3 8-hour cycles per day times 365 days. You take that yearly and then divide it out each day. So every 8 hours, essentially the longs are paying the shorts. And this dynamic is always changing based on position sizing. So if there's a lot of people that are long, have to pay the people that are short because it's imbalanced. And then if vice versa happens, like let's say Bitcoin goes to 130K and then suddenly a lot of people flip short. Well, now all the shorts have to pay the longs every 8 hours. And those funding rates are always dynamically changing based on volume and traders and position sizing. So that is basically how that all works. Let's see what else we got.
Votra also asked, do you have any plans to create a DAO fund?
In terms of creating a fund, there is no fund of Leo, right? Like there's no designated separate stake. Like all Leo is in circulation and owned by the community. In terms of Leo really operates like a DAO. Like you guys decide what gets done, what gets built. You vote on things, you use your Leo stake. That's really the whole way the ecosystem is built. I could see a future where potentially some form of inflows are created that then go into a DAO. And by DAO, what you're stating is a DAO is a fund, right? Like you're actually considering more of a development fund, for example, which is different than just a DAO, which I think Leo is already kind of a DAO in terms of being an organization where people vote on what is built and happens. And in terms of a fund for funding things by the community, but that being said, there's no more Leo that can be printed and there's no designated fund or stake for any of that. Really, I think is there a Bitcoin DAO in terms of a Bitcoin funded DAO? No, there's people that build things for Bitcoin because they own Bitcoin and they want it to succeed. And I look at Leo much the same. It's a limited supply coin where if you want it to succeed, you have to build things and be active. If you're not building things and being active, then it's not going to succeed. So very much the same as Bitcoin. There's no designated stake that is created for people to put out proposals and earn. It's just if you own Leo, build stuff that makes Leo better.
Yep. Ahmad Manga said, ARB Leo price is down compared to this morning. Does that mean volatility is going down? The answer to that would be no. Volatility isn't it's more if the price is going up and it's less if the price is going down. Volatility is literally the amount of price action for a simpler term. So basically, for instance, I did a post a few days ago on Bitcoin talking about how like the last couple of weeks, the volatility on Bitcoin was like non-existent because price was barely moving. It was basically just going sideways, doing a whole lot of nothing. And like Bitcoin yield pools on DeFi sites, like the APRs had shrunk to some of the lowest numbers I'd seen all year. And then poof, we got some volatility. Price could have shot up. It didn't have to go down, but we got a nice red candle on Bitcoin yesterday. Price action started getting aggressive. Therefore, volatility kicked up because there was more trading happening. Therefore, more fees being produced, and it shot up the APRs on the yield pools. So yeah, volatility is more based on how much price is moving, and that's the general explanation of volatility. Obviously, when it comes to Leo, that's like there's other facets as well, but that's just your basic definition of volatility.
Yeah. Volatility does not necessarily mean price up or down. It just means price movement. Mon Manga said any estimated time window for lending and perps. I don't know about lending because that's the Leo strategy team. So tag them on threads and maybe they'll give a ETA on it. In terms of perps, I mentioned before, probably by tomorrow or later this week, hopefully.
I see a couple of people suggesting and discussing a Leo stablecoin. My opinion is that's not even something that is probably worth thinking about right now. Yeah. Everything else.
Yeah, there won't be a Leo stablecoin. That being said, if Leo strategy builds a stablecoin for Leo lending, that could get interesting, similar to how DAI is built for, DAI for MakerDAO. I think that could be really interesting. So that would be like Leo strategy launching a new product. I don't know what it would be called, USDL or something, and using it for lending.
So Senor Coconut and a couple other people like talking about like perps because it sounds like it's new to them. The simple thing is all perpetual trading, like it's just basically leverage trading. So it gives you the ability to essentially trade more size than the capital you're putting up. That's really what perpetual futures are. And that's all I personally use them for. If I'm going to trade perps, it's just because it's like, all right, I'm going to put up X amount of dollars, but trade, let's say 4X that size. So if I'm right on my trade idea, I can make more money. The flip side of that is, your downside, your risk is that now if price goes the opposite direction that you're betting on, you can get liquidated and lose that capital, as opposed to just, being able to hold it indefinitely or, sell at whatever loss you want to sell at. If you hit basically your liquidation price, the amount of capital that you put up was now basically gone and you're liquidated out of that trade. So that's kind of like the basic version of perps. It's really just leverage trading.
Yeah, it's really, well, if you break down the word, right, a future is like a contract. It gives you the right but not obligation to buy or sell something in the future, right? So what you're essentially trading is a derivative contract of an asset, and you have to put up some level of money in order to get that derivative, and then you have to pay some sort of rate in order to hold that derivative, which is, in other words, a premium. So really what perps are, if you break down the word, is you have futures contracts, and the perpetual part of perpetual futures is that the funding rate, aka the premium rate, is perpetual. So there's no expiration on these contracts. You can hold them as long as you're willing to pay the funding rate. Like right now, it's 16% a year if you hold on to a Bitcoin perps trade on Ruggiero right now. Or for example, you go the other way, where if you go short Bitcoin on LeoDex perps through Ruggiero, you get paid 19% a year in order to be short. And the reason why is because in order to create a balanced ecosystem of, you have buyers and sellers, right? You have buyers and you have sellers, and they're, interacting with each other essentially through the DEX. The short sellers are getting paid right now and the longs are paying. If the market were to change drastically, for example, if Bitcoin went up a lot, you might have a lot more people who now want to be short and less people who want to be long. The dynamic flips the other way. It really is just a real-time dynamic that's always fluctuating.
Yeah. So also kind of basic Leo token question. Bushel said, which Leo has more value, HE or LeoDex? The answer is neither. Can there be discrepancies at points where one's worth a little bit more than the other, and that's where the arbitrage comes in? Sure, but they're one and the same. So as long as everything's efficient, the price of all the Leos are the same. There can be discrepancies from time to time, which generally will get arbed via an arb bot, but essentially they're the same price as the answer.
Yeah, Leo is fungible across all chains. So you can have price discrepancies, from pool to pool, but at the end of the day, one Leo is one Leo.
Yep. So we've been going close to an hour. Any additional shares in regards to the Leo universe? And B, we haven't talked about the general market in a long time, so I'd like to kind of close with that.
Yeah, it's a good idea. In terms of updates, I feel like we ran through most of them. I would give a little bit of a Leo strategy update just because I've been very fascinated in following all of this. The Surge presale has 200,820 Surge left in it, which means that it's about 60% sold out, which is pretty wild because just I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were at like 20%. And I kind of predicted that once we crossed that 20-25% threshold, things would accelerate and the sale would start selling out faster. So we've kind of seen that happen, and Surge is now selling out faster than ever, really. It's multiple percent every day that is sold out from the presale. So pretty amazing to see how that's progressing and accelerating. I think Surge will be sold out pretty soon. I know that Hive Engine's had some difficulties over the past couple of days. I have a deposit pending from another chain into Hive Engine that hasn't been paid out yet. So as soon as I get that, I plan to buy more Surge. I've got about 26,000, I think, right now, or 27, something like that, 27,000. So I plan to buy more before the presale ends, which I kind of feel like is going to be sometime this week, just based on how fast things have been progressing. With Surge selling out, I think things get continuously more interesting for Leo strategy, because obviously every dollar that they sell of Surge, they use to buy Leo. And then the bigger their balance sheet gets, the more that they can release products and services in the future, because it's all kind of contingent on how big their balance sheet is. So, if they have $10 million worth of Leo on their balance sheet, then they can launch a lot more products and services than if they had $1 million worth of Leo on their balance sheet. So I want to see Leo strategy scale. I want to see it grow. And I think Surge is the best way to support that growth right now. So I am surging. I see a lot of you guys posting the Surge commands in the Threadcast. So definitely cool to watch everything. The effective APR, and I've been tracking this because it's awesome, on the 27,000 Surge that I bought, has been 25% APR. So that's pretty awesome. Nice to be earning that kind of yield with limited downside and theoretically unlimited upside. So Surge is a great value proposition, especially if you want to take some profits and protect them. So that was my final piece. And then Mitch, what are you seeing in the markets? We've seen some crazy.
I'm not ready to lock in profits yet. So why am I buying Surge outside of yield? No, I mean, I have a little taste of Surge to get a little bit of the yield action, but I mean, I decided to still just YOLO full tilt Leo. The core, it's kind of like with Bitcoin, right? Everyone talks about, you're like, oh, should I do this, that, that? It's like, with all the Bitcoin people, it's like, oh, should I invest in MicroStrategy? Should I invest in, and there's some people that are like all about MicroStrategy and STRK and all that. And then there's other people that are like, I'm just investing in the base asset that all this stuff revolves around. And, is one better than the other? Really, the answer is yes and no. Depends on what your goals are. It depends on your timeline, right? And depends what you're trying to get done. So I'll probably grab a little bit more Surge just so my yield is something quote unquote worthwhile in terms of, what I have coming in. But yeah, outside of that, I've stayed with the Leo Maxi, which it's almost like a thought experiment because, obviously I know plenty of people in the ecosystem have gone the other route. So it'll be nice. We'll be able to compare notes a year from now or 2 years from now and see which was the better play. I think at the end of the day, the answer is going to be both worked out quite well. It's just a matter of which one, I guess potentially leverage your return more, which maybe the route I didn't go, but too late now. I'm committed. So, but yeah, I'll get a little more Surge. More Surge in my life though. But outside of that, yeah, I've picked my lane.
Yeah. What's interesting about all this is that what Leo strategy is creating is a dynamic economy, right? Like, because before you could buy Leo and you could hold it, and obviously now you can stake it and earn USDC. But outside of that, there was really no way to get different types of exposure to Leo, and Leo strategy is creating that. So now if you want exponential upside and downside exposure to Leo, so you want more volatility, you can buy LSTR, which essentially gives you leveraged exposure to Leo. If you want downside protection and you still want to participate in some of the upside, and you want to earn yield while you wait, Well, then Surge is what does that for you. Surge is a really unique product in that it lets you get that long-term Leo upside without any downside and get yield along the way, which is far different than, for example, if you buy Leo, then you get the upside and the downside and you don't get any yield other than if you stake it for USDC rewards. So Surge's value proposition is very different than something like LSTR, which is also different from something like Leo. So you're really not wrong for doing any of those three or a mixture of the three. What you're doing is you're changing your exposure. So, for example, if you're 100%, like let's say Mitch right now, you're 100% Leo. Well, let's say Leo goes to 25 cents and you're like, you know what? I still think Leo's going to go up, but I don't want to be, I need to take a little bit of profit. I don't want all this 100,000 to be exposed to the downside. Well, you could take, say, 10% of your stake, $10,000. You could buy Surge, and then you still get long-term upside exposure to Leo. You just get a little bit less exposure to it. But in exchange, you get a capped downside. So you can't lose value of your principal. And then in the meantime, while you wait for Leo to go up, you get paid yield every week.
Yep.
So that's what Surge does. It just gives you a completely different value proposition. I think as Leo strategy expands, there's going to be more types of exposure that you can get to Leo and the Leo token economy and potentially to other assets as well. I know Leo Strategy's goal is really build as big of a balance sheet as possible of Leo and then use that balance sheet as the backing to launch more products and services. And then those products and services generate fee revenue and market making revenue for Leo Strategy, which then gets plowed right back into more Leo to expand the balance sheet further. So again, these products just give you different types of exposure. You're not wrong or right for going any direction.
Exactly. It's a matter of
it's really a personal preference.
Balancing a portfolio or, everyone's got different objectives. So some people super aggressive, some people want to balance it out. Some people, like you said, want to lock in, and that changes as price moves. It changes for me as price moves. So, but yeah, pretty cool products. Honestly, to wrap up with the market, obviously Bitcoin we'll just talk about. So my question to you is, it's been outside of 2 days in June, Bitcoin has been 100K or higher since early May. So, we're going on, 4, almost 5 months now. So I guess the question is, do we see Bitcoin go under 100K again at any point, or is it just consolidating, for the next push to new highs?
That's a really good question. I feel like there's too many bullish narratives and actual fundamentals for Bitcoin to go below 100K for any extended period of time. Like, could we dip to 98 or something and then, just kind of trickle around there and then come back up? Yeah, for sure. But I don't know. There's so many bullish narratives, and rates just finally got dropped for the first time. And people are expecting more rate drops. The Fed even said there's going to be, 1 or 2 more this year. And then if they're dropping it this year, they're most likely going to drop it at some point next year. So, with rates dropping, with, inflation on the rise, with, Bitcoin's narrative and kind of the global narrative being, people need more of a inflation hedge. They need a, kind of pristine sovereign asset. I have a hard time believing that Bitcoin is ready to draw down in like another extended bear market anytime soon. I know a lot of people think we're in like the super cycle where Bitcoin will never go down. I don't think that's true. I think we still have a bear market in us.
But there's always a bear market. It's just a matter of, it's not if, it's just when. So,
right.
And it can be extended, especially like when, like you say, government starts cutting. And if we start, quantitative easing and all that stuff, that's liquidity that could be pumped into all assets, including Bitcoin and the crypto market. So yeah, it's interesting. As far as it's going to, like, for me, outside of, like maybe, like you said, a little just blip below, it's going to take a bear market for us to see sub 100, and if we do get a bear market, then I think I'm looking at, 90K, so to speak, as a target. And that could be it, unless things get ugly. I don't know that we're getting a bear market because government's starting to loosen the liquidity narrative. And that's always been number go up for speculative assets. So we'll see. But it does seem like as the market matures and as more institutional money has come into it, the volatility on a whole isn't as aggressive. And that could change at any time, but it's just the overall market, I feel like, is less volatile than bull markets and bear markets gone past, especially pre-COVID, where you'd see really ridiculous moves. Now, even when we get a rip, we get a lot of consolidation that follows. At least that's kind of been the theme for the past year, maybe less. I mean, we did get one big dip, but it wasn't like it's not as violent as it was for those that were around in the 2015 to 2020 window. That's my 2 cents. In the meantime, I'm just continuing to add Bitcoin, add Leo, and ideally have my Bitcoin and my Leo treasury to serve me in the rest of my life.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is, Leo grows at, in perpetuity, really, as now there's no inflation and it's got a max cap of 30 million tokens. And then, with Leo strategy working on lending, I mean, the goal is, let's say, Mitch, you want to go out and buy a property 2-3 years from now, and you need to raise some capital, and you've got a nice stack of Leo, and that Leo is worth, say $10 per Leo, but you still think there's more upside similar to Bitcoin. You may not want to sell it. So instead you go out and you put that Leo up as collateral and you take a loan against it from Leo strategy. And then you go out and you use that USD to do whatever you want. And then, a few years later or a month later or whatever, you go in and you pay that loan back and you get your Leo back. You could stake it for SLEO, you could sell it, you can do whatever you want. And that's what Leo strategy is bringing to the table, which I'm very excited about, is just financial tools and products and services that I think we've all really wanted. We're in the age of the democratization and the digitization and the tokenization, all the Asians of society. Everything is moving to this arena, and we're already here. We've been here for years, and the world is really coming to us now as we continue to build out all these things. And I think Leo is perfectly positioned as an ecosystem to absorb economic value. Like I said, net economic inflows is what matters. We absorb all this economic activity and it flows straight into Leo, and Leo grows. And I foresee Leo going to $10 billion in market cap over the next 10 years. And we're going to get there by building the best products that we can.
I like the goals. Cool. Sure. All right. We'll see you next week when we can check our USDC rewards and be happy.
Yeah. Next week, we'll have a lot of fun screenshots to post. So check those rewards, stake your Leo, have a good time. So thanks, Mitch. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Later.
Peace.